Good morning, men and women of God. Now, it's funny when I said that, some of you guys were looking at me like, who? Who are you talking to? Looking back? We'll get to that. Now, how many of you enjoy traveling? Anyone? Like going on vacations, getting out of the high desert, someplace where it's not hot and dusty, cool? Right, hands down. How many of you like staying in hotels? Okay. Yeah. I've stayed in some pretty nice ones, and I've stayed in some that I just wanted to get out of really fast. But I was going to put a picture up on the screen from one of my trips, and I couldn't find it. I was going through literally 20 years of photographs, and I could not find this one. But one of the hotels we stayed at had this really interesting bathroom. And there's, in a bathroom it should be, toilet, shower tub, sink, and that's probably about it. Microwaves don't belong in the bathroom. Not joking. I've been in a hotel where the microwave was literally above the toilet. Disgusting as that is, the weirdest thing I think I've ever seen in a bathroom was a telephone. Literally, you'd be sitting in there, it's like, oh wow. Can you deliver some toilet paper to room 506? And it's like, okay, yeah, they can get it there, but how are they going to get in the room to you? That's kind of disgusting. But one of the things I love finding in hotels, you guys probably have seen this, as you're going through looking for the TV remote, there's usually a Bible in the bedside table. And if you've looked at it, it would actually have a little time on it, say it's a Gideon Bible. And yeah, like Gideon, who's that? Gideon is the guy we're going to be talking about today. He was one of the judges in the book of Judges. One of the more famous ones, but like maybe some of you guys feel, he didn't start out as a great follower of God, but God saw what he could be. And he helped him get over his fears, over his inadequacies, over his doubts, to become the great man of God that now this ministry called the Gideon Bible Society has. They've named it after this great guy. Now, in Judges chapter 6, we find Gideon, and Gideon is threshing wheat. He's basically separating the inedible parts of the wheat from the parts that you can actually eat. Anyone who's ever eaten oatmeal and found something nasty you could not chew, right? That's what he's trying to separate from it. The way you normally do this is you go up on a hilltop where the wind blows across, and you do the most pointless activity that looks like imaginable, and you take this giant pitchfork and you just throw the wheat up in the air. And it falls down. And you do it again. And gravity works all the time. It falls down. And you do over and over and over again. But as you do that, the wind is blowing the nasty inedible stuff away, and the kernels fall to the ground, and that's what you can eat. Now, Gideon is not up on a hilltop doing this. He's in what I have a picture on the screen there, a wine press, where you squish grapes to make wine. And you can see in that picture there's that deep depression hole in the center, and there's another hole down there, whereas people would stomp on the grapes with their feet. They would, the juice would go down through that hole and out, and they would collect it. Now, if you know anything about wheat, if it gets wet, it gets nasty. Soggy cereal lovers? Yeah, you don't exist. So here's Gideon trying to separate wheat in a damp wine press, not on a hilltop, but actually indoors. If this was actually the time when this wine press was used, there'd be a structure built over it. And the reason why he's doing that is because he's scared. He's a coward. The Midianites have conquered Israel. They've been ruling over Israel for the last 7 years. They would continually attack them, raid them. If they had food, they'd steal it from them. They'd keep the Israelites on the edge of starvation. And so Gideon is just trying to eat, just taking the wheat he has, trying to separate, trying to make it edible in a wine press. And it's in this place that God comes to him and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Does Gideon sound like a mighty warrior? No, not at all. Again, he's cowering, hiding in a wine press, doing what he should not, separating things where it just doesn't work. Because he's afraid for his life. He's just trying to survive. And when I called you guys men and women of God, some of you guys went, who's he talking to? Okay? I hope you know it's you. Okay? God already saw Gideon for who he was going to be. Just like he sees you and I for who we are going to be. And he addresses Gideon as such. Now, like some of you, Gideon was like, I don't believe you. I don't think I'm a mighty warrior. I think you've got the wrong guy. I don't even think you're God. Imagine saying that face to face with God. He's like, where are all these great miracles that we've heard of in the past? Moses and Joshua and all that. We haven't seen that for a long time. And certainly not in my lifetime. And then he goes on to say, God has turned his back on us. Well, if Gideon was paying attention to his society and actually even to his family, Israel was worshiping idols. Who turned their back on who? Yeah, Israel turned their back on God. Which is probably why they weren't seeing all the mighty acts that God did in the past to his people and for his people. So he doesn't believe, but God's looking past that, saying, don't worry. I'm calling you to deliver your people from the Midianites. And Gideon's going, whoa, you really have the wrong guy now, because, yeah, I'm from the largest tribe in our nation, but my clan is the smallest. My family is the smallest. And in fact, I'm the youngest in my family. I am the most insignificant person in this country. Great choice. He doesn't believe. But the cool thing is, he wants to. As God continues to talk to him, Gideon is starting to think, maybe God actually wants to use me. Maybe this is the God I've heard about. And so he asks God for a sign. He's like, okay, if you're God, let me offer a sacrifice to you. And God's like, cool, no problem. Does that, disappears, and we go on from there. Now, God doesn't just send Gideon to the big, huge assignment of delivering the people from the Midianites. He builds up his confidence a little bit. Needs a little starter project. And the first one is tear down your dad's altar to Baal and cut down his Asherah pole. Okay? These are two things that the Israelites used to worship false gods. You ever do something that you knew your parents weren't going to like? Okay? Have you ever thought of okay, I could do that, but man, my parents are going to kill me. And usually you stop right there, right? I appreciate the honesty. I really do. Now, here's Gideon going, okay, if I do this, I am blessed. And so, but he wants to believe. He is, God has accepted his sacrifice. And so he is told, build a proper altar to God and offer a sacrifice on it. Okay? And so Gideon does so, but he does so at night because he's afraid. We love the darkness because we don't think people will see what we do. And so Gideon tears down the altar, he cuts down the Asherah pole, turns the wood into firewood, offers a sacrifice on it. It's a great victory. And he thinks he's gotten away with it. He thinks nobody's found out, but when you read the text, he didn't do it alone. He had some people help him. And one of those people told on him the next morning. And the entire town wanted to kill Gideon. But God protected Gideon through his dad, ironically. His dad was like, okay, yes, Gideon did that. And yeah, he should not have done that. But of course the dad's like, I don't want my son killed. And so he goes, if Baal is God, then let Baal kill Gideon. And now the people are left with a problem. They're worshiping a false god, make believe. But they're like, we can't admit that. And so we can either admit Baal is not real and kill Gideon ourselves, or we say he is real and Gideon may or may not die. They choose to let Gideon live. They actually give him a nickname, Jerub Baal, which is Baal deal with him. Did Baal ever deal with Gideon? No, because he's make-believe. And so Gideon lives and goes on. And so God protects Gideon. Gideon's courage and confidence and trust are getting built up here. His fear is starting to go away. And God knows that. And he goes, all right, time for the big show. It's time to go deliver your people from the Midianites. And so Gideon is sent to fight, and he is still not totally confident in this. And so he asks God for another couple signs. You ever do that prayer? You know, God, if you want me to do this, then do this, please. Anyone? Bueller? No. Okay. Way before your time, I know. But this is what Gideon does. He says, I've got this fleece, this blanket, essentially. He says, God, I'm going to place it outside. And I want you to make, keep the fleece dry at night, but have all the ground around it wet with dew. Ever camp near the beach? Okay? And you wake up the next morning and everything that you left outside is what?
Wet.
Soaking wet. So you're like, great. If you ever forgotten you were so tired, didn't have your coffee yet, and you sat down, that's a bad morning. You're walking back in the tent. You're back? I wet myself. And that's what you did. And so it doesn't happen that way. You never walk out there and something's like bone dry and everything else is soaking wet. But that's what happens the next morning. And Gideon's like, okay, God, cool. Can we do one more? And let's reverse it. This time, let the blanket be soaking wet, but everything else dry. He wakes up the next morning and guess what? It is just that way. And so Gideon's confidence increases. His fear starts to go away, and he is ready to go. Not only that, as he collects and gathers the men to fight this battle, it was actually too big. Gideon starts with 32,000 men. Just to give you an idea of how many people that is, the city of Jericho was conquered with only 8,000. He's got an army 4 times that size. You think he's feeling confident?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And God's like, we can do better. And so he tells Gideon, tell all the men, if you're scared, go home. If you're a coward, check out. Go back home. Go to mommy. That's cool. And 22,000 of them leave. 2/3 of his army gone. Now, if you were Gideon, are you feeling confident anymore?
No.
Probably not. Okay? And so they continue walking towards the Midianite camp. And God's like, still too many. And so they stop by a river, they're getting a drink of water, and 300 of them are smart. They kneel down next to the river, and they reach down with their hands, get some water out, maybe 2 hands, cup it, bring it to their mouth, and they drink that way. This is great, because if they were to be attacked, how quickly can they get back up? Really quick. They're just back up like this. Now, 9,700 idiots just knelt down and stuck their face in the water. And some of you have been this thirsty before, where you're just like, oh, water! And they're, you're in there, face down. This is really awkward. But anyway, and just like down there, and drinking, just sucking it in. And God's like, okay, Gideon, you see what's going on here? Okay? You see those 9,700 idiots with their faces in the water and their butts in the air? Send them home. You don't need them. Okay? It reminds me of, if you've ever watched like those nature shows when the giraffe goes to the water with the drink.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? And they have to like look around, and then they have to like spread their legs out really, really far so that their head can get down to the water, because believe it or not, their legs are actually longer than their heads. And that takes a while. And if a lion attacks when they're like this, they're gone. Okay? Not prepared. Same thing with those 9,700 guys with their faces in the water. They're gone. They are not battle-worthy. Send them home. But now Gideon has his army of 32,000 shrunk down to 300. And God's like, that's the reason. If you're Gideon, how are you feeling? You're like, okay. And as they're going, God keeps only the 300. As they are going, God has them stop along the way to pick up some weapons. And he picks up some of the most amazing weaponry you have ever heard of. He says, Gideon, give every man torch. Okay? Give every man a horn or trumpet. Okay, starting to sound like a drum line, but okay, got it. And give them a clay jar.
What?
I can imagine Gideon just going, God, we just passed like 9 gun shops on the way here. Why are you making us shop for weapons at Home Depot? I don't get this. God's like, don't worry, we got this. Okay? And so he encouraged him. He's like, if you're feeling a little doubtful, go eavesdrop on the camp. You'll be good. Anyone loves eavesdropping? I love eavesdropping. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Now, what's funny is some of the teachers, I know they're smiling and they're nodding, but they're not raising their hands because I'm going to warn you guys, we eavesdrop on you. We get some of the greatest stories, greatest illustrations. When some of you get in trouble, you're like, how'd they know? Because you blurted it out in class. Just saying. I fully admit freely, and I told this to my classes, I let you talk because I'm getting info. I'm pretty sure I'm not alone. Do with that as you will. Now, I was like, yeah, you did. And so they go, and Gideon and one of the soldiers, they sneak up to the edge of the camp. And there's these 2 Midianite soldiers that are on guard duty. They pulled the short straws, and they're talking. And there's like, dude, I had a dream last night. And in these cultures, they believe dreams actually meant something. And so the other guy's like, tell me, I need to know what the gods are telling us. And the guy has the strangest dream in the world. I know you've had weird dreams, I've had weird dreams, but nothing tops this. The guy's like, I dreamed about a loaf of bread. Yeah, he did. And the loaf of bread came rolling down the hill into the camp and destroyed our camp. Okay, cloudy with a chance of meatballs, maybe that inspired it. But it's like, what in the world? And then the other guy's like, oh, I know what it means, dude. No, you don't. But he's like, dude, Gideon is going to destroy us. That's exactly what that dream means. And actually, that's what it did mean. Gideon and his friend are like, yeah, we got this. Gonna go away, stifling their laughter, I'm sure. And the next morning, actually during the night, God tells them, surround the camp, light the torches, throw down the jars, and blow on the horns. You got this. And that's exactly what they do. And the Midianites get so confused. They look around, they see them surrounded by torches, they hear the breaking of the pottery, they hear the horns blowing, they think that the battle horns calling the army in, like, we are surrounded, we are dead. They panic, they pull out their swords, and they start killing anyone that they think is an Israelite. Which means they're killing each other. Gideon and his army are just out around here, watching the show. God's fighting the battle for them. Strange weapons. Midian is defeated. I was thinking, maybe the jars weren't for breaking. Maybe they were for popcorn as they watched. I don't know. Probably not. God didn't say breaking. And so Midian is defeated, and Gideon, of the smallest family, the smallest clan, youngest in Israel, becomes their leader for the next 40 years. When God said way back in the wine press, "Hail, mighty man of God," this is what he was seeing. When I say good morning, men and women of God, this is what I'm seeing. Not who you are now, but your potential to be and become great, as Gideon did, step by step along the way. God gives us everything we need. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3 says, God gives us everything we need for life and godliness through the knowledge of him, which we get from the Bible. And as we teach you that, you're equipped with everything you need. Gideon wasn't great, but God made him great. Gideon needed encouragement, and God encouraged him multiple times, right? The sacrifice, the fleece, twice, the eavesdropping. He encouraged him as much as he needed. Gideon's faith grew step by step as his fear shrank little by little. Gideon would become the godly person that God knew he would be. And as insignificant, as ill-equipped, and as fearful as you may feel now, so can you. And Gideon stands as an example and a hope that God can use us to accomplish great things as he's done with many men and women in the past. Let's pray. Father God, we do thank you for your word. We thank you for examples like Gideon. He's an ordinary guy, scared, but wanting to believe. God, I know that describes some of us here in this room. God, may we be encouraged and see that just as you worked in Gideon's life, you're still the same God today who works in the lives of your people to make them into the people that you created and saved and know us to become. God, continue to give us courage, give us boldness, drive us to your word that gives us everything we need for life and godliness. We pray in Jesus' name.